क्यों काटते हैं पापी रोज गौ माता, क्यों काटते हैं पापी रोज गौ माता। जागो हिंदू जागो रोए गौ माता, क्यों काटते हैं पापी रोज गौ माता, काटते हैं पापी रोज गौ माता। जागो हिंदू जागो रोए गौ माता, हिंदुओं को पुकारे आज गौ माता।
Welcome back to all of our 5 listeners. This is the new episode of Bharatiya Janata podcast. अब की बार educate, agitate, organize यार. Today, unfortunately, Aditya is not with me. Aditya, for those of you who do not remember any of our names, is the other guy who's on this podcast with me. He had some personal emergency. I think his Gau Mata is not doing well or something. So his replacement is Saurabh. Hey Saurabh, hi.
Hi Raj, hi.
So I mean, Aditya knows that Saurabh is here. I'm not cheating on him, but the reason we decided to invite Saurabh was because, so Saurabh, I'll be very honest with you. The reason that I wanted to talk to you was because there is one eminent foreign policy expert who is constantly communicating with you,
Okay.
who I'm talking about, and that is why.
Who is this person?
Yeah,
I have a few followers, so I don't know.
Who's the most famous of your followers?
Oh! I know who you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, she does. Yeah, she communicates with me all the time. I think you follow my and her interaction. Yeah.
So let's take it from there. So basically, could you give actually? So for all the 5 listeners again, acha Saurabh, ek aur cheez, as you are very well aware of, right? There are 5 people who listen to us, and then there is this 6th guy. He goes by the name of A. Shah. I'm not sure who this guy is, but
Okay.
a very serious listener, it seems.
Curious name.
So for all of these guys, can you give us a brief background of you, basically?
Okay. Well, I'm basically in humanities. I'm not a techie guy. Some might think I'm a techie.
मतलब सीधे losers ही start हो गया. अच्छा चलो ठीक है.
So I'm not a techie. I'm not an engineer. I do some study of engineering. I'm basically an architect. Okay, and not an architect as in data architect, but like architect.
like घर बनाने वाला.
Yes, designing and all that. So that is my background. That is what I did my bachelor's in. That is what I did my master's in. I did my bachelor's back in India, and then I did my master's in the States.
So when you say humanities, so like then what is the relationship between architecture that you studied and humanities or whatever you?
What's so interesting, because people think architecture might be a field of of engineering, and yes, it is. It comes from design, but like. Back in my university, the college that the College of Architecture came under was called College of Arts, Media and Design. Now, what would you call that? That would be coming under humanities. Okay.
Jamia se padhe kya?
No. This is my College of Architecture back in India was under Punjab University. So that was a whole separate college. So that was not even under any engineering.
नहीं मैंने इसलिए बोला because मैं जामिया का भी मैंने सुना कि शायद उनका ऐसे ही कुछ नाम है उनका.
Yeah, I think उनका नाम है something acoustics and something, College of Architecture and Acoustics or something. But हमारा ये जो US में जो था, Northeastern where I started, has College of Arts, Media and Design. So the Americans consider architecture to be humanities. So I always say it's humanities. Plus we study history.
Interesting. This is the first time that I am hearing this.
Yes.
So, and I know us, and I'll go into what we plan to discuss today, but just a few more minutes because now I'm fascinated. Yeah. So when we say humanities, you know what I have in mind, right?
Yeah.
So what aspect of that do you cover, like in a day in your life in terms of your career? What exactly are you doing?
Humanities is so deeply tied into architecture. Sometimes people just think it's simple design. We have to study a history of architecture. We have to study beginning from the earliest, like from the cave time right up to contemporary architecture. We are studying the entire history. So we have classes for that. Then we have classes on urban design. We have classes on urban studies. We have classes on climate studies, like climate theories and everything.
Interesting.
Sustainability.
Climate. Okay.
So climate is one of the biggest parts of architecture today. I mean, there's no running away from it. Everybody.
I live in San Francisco, so I mean earthquakes.
Yeah, but like sustainability, urban theories, urban design. I did a whole course on urban. This was a course called Urban and Regional Policy in Developing Countries, and there was nothing design in it. It was a whole paper that I did studying the slum eradication in Delhi.
Very, very interesting.
It
So
was
when
like a
you,
it was like a
sorry, go
20
on.
page, yeah, just finishing that point, it was like a 20-page paper that I did
Mhm.
just studying slum eradication in Delhi. So I consider it to be humanities in some way.
So when you started your undergrads in India, did
Mhm.
you have in mind that you will be doing all this, or did this just happen through time?
I would say, look, I'll be very honest. When I did, my parents kind of pressurized me to go into non-med. So
Mhm.
I did
Acha.
all, I went through the motions. Okay.
Mhm.
When I, after my plus two, I gave law papers. I gave exams for NIFT in Delhi. I cleared that also. I cleared law exams also. So I could have become a lawyer also. And then I cleared this exam, which is like, it was the
Acha.
cheapest education I could find. It was like 5,000 rupees a semester or something. And it was completely government funded. It was
Mhm.
on Punjab University. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like subsidized education, and study at a government seat. So I was like, why not go for architecture? And I was always towards. I was so happy to get out of engineering. Anything to get
Yeah.
out of it. And
I
so
wish
it
I
was
had
kind of
that
accidental.
clarity.
Yeah. But I knew I wanted to go into design, and nothing pleased me more than coming into this.
And another question, usually what happens is, oh, and we even in other episodes of this podcast and in general we've discussed this a lot, is that especially in India,
Yeah.
if you are part of the STEM thing,
Yes.
you are cut off from a lot of discussions around humanities, and end up you tend to end up being more on the right
Choice
of
third.
things.
Yeah.
More on the right of things, I was saying. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when did you find your politics? If you know what I'm like, like, when did you find that this is your political identity apart from your personal identity? If you know.
The thing is that I'll be very honest.
Mhm.
I mean, as a child, I used to read a lot. I used to be at the library. I'm kind of a loner kid, so I would go to the library a lot. I would read a lot of books. My parents set me and my grandparents set me very early on. Like, I was the kid who would buy an encyclopedia for his birthday. Like, I was weird. Okay,
समझ रहा हूँ,
so
हाँ.
yeah, and I was reading books. I read Anna Karenina when I was 12. When
Don't
other children
क्या
were,
मैं फर्स्ट ईयर
yes,
में पढ़ा ये.
I
और
started reading. I started reading Jane Eyre and Anna Karenina, and when other kids were reading Harry Potter, and I hated it. I hated Harry Potter. So
confession, I've never read Harry Potter, but
I hated it.
du-
I got
during
through
that
like
time,
10 pages. Yeah.
th- I grew up in जबलपुर, man. हैरी पॉटर जब तक पहुंचता तब तक मैं बड़ा हो गया था.
No, but
But anyway, go on.
yeah, but I think that was when I kind of knew that I have a different bent. I'm very artistic in that way, in some ways, and I'm reading stuff which other people are not reading. And then I think politics. I think it's been a gradual discovery. I think my father is retired from the military, and my grandfather was also in the military. And even on
Oh.
my mother's side of the family, there are people who are in the military.
Mhm.
So serving and people who are retired. So I think my politics is complex because I think the person that you just said, I have a foreign policy expert who
Mhm.
follows me and I
You
follow her
can you
back.
can name her. It's fine. It's not like, I mean, you can
Dr.
name.
Christine Fair.
Uh,
Some of her, some people troll her, they hate her, whatever. I find her quite interesting and quite knowledgeable. So
I'm very
this,
neutral to her, by the way. But yeah.
I find her interesting. I think I mirror some of her politics. I guess she's the thing with me is that I am very much. I guess I'll be called a liberal at home, but I think on foreign policy I might be considered a conservative.
Hawk.
Not hawk, like not like a terrible hawk. I'm not one of those people who goes about banding about saying declare war on everybody. That is not me. I think I'm more. I think I call myself conservative,
You're
passive.
basically saying कि अगर हम आपसे दूध मांगेंगे तो आप खीर नहीं देंगे.
No. I'm not one of those people who we want POK back, and I'm not. foolish. I am quite realistic. I think I'm just someone who says that don't fall for Pakistan. That's what
So
I
this
just
is
say that don't buy their shit. That's simple.
so some background to our listeners. So I know Saurabh because both of us are through a podcast.
Subscribers. Yeah.
Both of us are subscribers to News Laundry, and News Laundry has been kind enough to create a WhatsApp group of its international subscribers, if you can
Yeah.
call us that. So that is how I know him. And beyond that, Saurabh, ever since I've seen you on Twitter, my
Mhm.
impression of you has been that you have a very good grip, much better than me at least, on foreign
Mhm.
policy stuff.
Yeah.
And that is why I kind of wanted to talk to you, especially after whatever has happened recently
Yeah.
in India.
Mhm.
And we will get to that, but uh, I still wanted to talk a bit about you. So
Mhm.
I understand that your all of our politics is
Mhm.
complex. In
Yeah.
fact, the older I am getting, I get this feeling that I'm getting more to the center, which I hate the term center. But like on certain issues, I'm not entirely as lefty as I thought I'd be.
Yeah.
I don't know, things are changing a bit, but and so I understand that politics is complex.
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to ask you, was there a moment while growing up in India? I'm assuming we are from the
Yeah.
same generational group.
Yeah.
Growing up in India, something that happened that
Mhm.
made you question things. So I'll give you an example, and maybe that will help you elaborate
Yeah.
a bit more, especially because your family is from has a military background.
Yeah.
So my family is hardcore Sankhi.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and then I left home and for to do my engineering, and that is how kind of got out of that whole sphere, and then I started to look at things from my own perspective, and I always liked reading, so it
Mhm.
happened. But there is this moment in my life.
Mhm.
This is around 2009, 8, 9, where I read upon, and this will, I don't know how you'll take this, but I read upon what the whole story of Afzal Guru,
Yeah.
and that was the first time when I really sat and thought कि maybe हम भी bad guys हो सकते हैं, maybe
Mhm.
there is a
Yeah.
chance. So was there any moment in your development where an incident that happened around you that made you question, जो हमें बचपन से सिखाया जाता है कि इंडिया इज माय कंट्री एंड ऑल इंडियंस आर माय ब्रदर्स, जो pledge of beyond the pledge of allegiance is, you know?
Look, I'll give you a. I was about to do this anecdote later, but let me give you an anecdote that I think when I look at it retroactively, like I look back at it, I'm like, that informs a lot about my understanding of what India is today and how you need to work with such a diverse nation. So when I was young, my father, this will take about a minute or two, I hope. I'll be quick. My
प्लीज
father,
टेक योर
yeah,
टाइम.
my
अपन दोनों और
father,
वो तीन चार लोग ही सुनते हैं अपन को, चिल, और उन
yeah.
लोगों के पास बहुत टाइम है.
So my father was posted in when I was young. I think I must have been 9 or 10. That's how young I was. And my father was posted in a place called Miryani, which is on the border of Nagaland and Assam. It's in Assam, but it's almost on the Nagaland border. And my father was posted there, and it was not a field. It was a field posting. It was not a family station, so only officers were there. And one summer, my mother and I decided to go and visit him. We were like, okay, we'll travel all the way there. We'll take the train. And so we went from Old Delhi to Guwahati, and then a bus journey to a place called Jorhat,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 45, 50 kilometers, and further ahead to Miryani. And so we went there. It was a hot, humid place. We stayed in Jorhat for some time. We went to Miryani finally, where he was posted. And when we went to Miryani, I don't remember the journey while going, but I remember the journey while coming back
Mm-hmm.
very specifically. And this was in mid 90s. I think it must have been 96, 97, maybe. Yeah. So that time
This
when we
this
went,
this is like conflict is happening, dude, like
yes, yeah.
at its
So,
peak
yeah,
basically.
yes. And this is the time when insurgency is really hot in
Yeah,
the Northeast during the 90s. Peace has come now relatively to the Northeast in the
yeah,
last
yeah.
couple of decades. And at that time, I
Mark
remember there,
decade.
I think my father used to tell me there are 15 or 16 insurgencies at the time in the Northeast, and they had declared open season on the families of officers and officers. They had said that they would be specifically targeted. And while coming back in the bus, I remember we had to make the journey back from Miriani to Jorhat in a Swaraj Mazda yellow bus, school bus. And there was a 3-ton truck and a 3-ton truck in front of us and a 3-ton truck behind us. And it was filled with soldiers carrying weapons. And then in the Swaraj Mazda bus, in the middle where we were traveling, there were two-seaters, basically two-seater seats. And the aisle seat is where you were supposed to sit, and the window seat was supposed to be occupied by another soldier carrying a weapon right next to you.
Mhm.
And this is how we traveled for about 45 kilometers in either direction, basically. And while coming back, I remember the journey very clearly because it was during the day. And this convoy essentially made us travel. So, because the tactic of insurgencies in the Northeast is ambush. So that's how
Yeah.
you have to travel. There's no other way. They can start shooting at the windows anywhere. There can be IEDs on the roads. And that was our journey for traveling about 45 kilometers just to reach Jorhat. That's how much of a risk there was. And then I remember the day that we left Guwahati and came back to Old Delhi, the next day we saw in the papers that the platform where we had left on Guwahati, there had been a bomb explosion.
Wow.
So this, I think, retroactively, when this incident keeps on playing back in my mind, this journey and this incident and that 2 months that I spent in that place, and I think now I have a better understanding. Like, I'd say that started somewhere in my early 20s, where I understood that India is too different, it's too complicated for me to try to define what it is. And especially as I grew up and I had students alongside me. When I did my bachelor's, I had students from the Northeast who would come. There was a student who was from Tripura. I had a senior who was from Assam. And I think I had developed an understanding interacting with them because they had come on scheduled tribe reserved seats to North India. And I think I interacted with them and I developed an understanding that, you can't define who is Indian. People are very
That's a
different
great
and they come
point.
from very different places. And after seeing the conflict that I had seen in Northeast and then the relative peace that I saw in the news through the 2000s, I find that to try to homogenize India, I think that is not my idea of India. So I
मतलब एक
think
भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत नहीं हो सकता क्या?
you can try, and there are certainly people who are giving it a shot, but I think it's a futile exercise, and it will be the ruin of India.
So are you one of those who believe that in the end and I know these phrases sound cliched, but in the end the soul of India will prevail over these things. Are you one
No,
of those?
yeah, I don't. I'm in fact quite a cynic. I think those people, those are platitudes. I think, you
Yeah.
know, um, I do not think the undoing of India will be what these projects are trying to do, which is, homogenizing India. And I think the undoing of India will be other things, but the problem is that the people who are
Other
trying to
things money economics and stuff?
economics and I'd say climate change will
Oh
be a
yeah, okay.
very major
वो ये तो
critical
ऐसा है ना,
factor,
maybe
which I
because
think,
you are
yeah.
no go on go on. I'll say it
No,
afterwards.
I just wanted to say I think nobody has their eye on climate change and what its impact on India will be.
Exactly. So that because even for someone like me who thinks of themselves, who cares, I think I care. This is, and I know this is a reality, but even then, it is so much in in my periphery that I never think about it. Jabki, more often than not, you keep reading about the water crisis in that is
Yeah,
already happening in India, and yet. Yeah, it's kind of almost frightening how less we think about climate change as something that will affect India, which is such a huge such a huge mass of population.
yeah,
Going just another question on your
yeah,
anecdote.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, sure.
so tell me again, how old were you when this happened?
I think I was so. This was '97 because I remember after that we were posted to
Mm.
Maharashtra. So this was I must have been 9 or 10. This is quite a vivid memory.
Mhm. So, uh, did you ever, I mean, through this experience and assuming other such experiences of
Mhm.
meeting other people who were still Indian but very different than you were,
Yeah.
did you ever फील कि हमें जो हमेशा बताया जाता है या पढ़ाया जाता है कि
Mhm.
इंडिया इज अ ग्रेट कंट्री और इंडिया इज दिस पीसफुल सॉफ्ट पावर हाउ
Mhm.
हाउ आर वी क्वांटिफाइंग इट लाइक व्हाई डू वी से इट ऐसा ऐसा थॉट प्रोसेस आया
You know, if you ever go to my Twitter profile, my description,
आई
which I think it's very
अभी
pretentious, but anyways,
अभी याद नहीं है
uh,
मुझे मैं देखना पड़ेगा
yeah, but anyways, it says Sino-Indian relations enthusiast.
या या
My
या
a lot of my focus is on China studies. Okay, and so I think I have read a lot of written text and books and a whole lot of stuff on China studies, and I think when you see another state which claims of a rich history, which
almost like a Indian replica
yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
the civilizational
and
pride.
yeah, and I actually wrote about this. I think I tweeted something out to Christine about this, and replied to one of her tweets. And I said there is this delusion that has set in certain countries, and this has come. I think this is the cynic in me speaking, but this is true for China. It's true for India. It's true for Iran. It's true for America. America has this great expression called American exceptionalism, which is
Oh
a
yeah,
whole lot of
Lord.
BS, which every foreign policy, which most traditional foreign policy experts in the US will spout. But it's quite hollow actually. It's very much a created concept. It's manufactured, and it's true also. It's true for China's Middle Kingdom. It's true for India's also about this ancient sabhyata or whatever they keep it. Yes, there are civilizational aspects, but realities today are different. I mean, countries develop, countries come up, countries go down. There are phases. So I think this it has been gradual, but I think uh, I think reading about other cultures and other civilizations, one realizes that you are not alone. There are many others. So have
Yeah, of
several seats.
course. So again, comparing or talking about China and India together. So China, there is one difference
Mhm.
that all of China, more than 90% of China is Han, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Whereas for what we today call the modern India, it's
Hmm.
basically like a Europe like
Yeah.
federal, right? A
Yeah. Yeah.
federation.
Yeah.
Do you not think that for a country like India to exist, they need, even if fictional, they need this fictional idea of this historical greatness of this historically united common civilization? Because without it, what are we? Without it, how are we even together? I mean, just playing devil's advocate.
The I'll tell you a very there's this interesting book which was I think it's by Diana Eck, India a Geography it's called, and I think Shashi Tharoor also, who I know you ridicule a lot, but I don't like him. But the book is interesting because she makes this argument that if you look at the historical geography of India, the places of pilgrimage are what link India. She says that
Mhm,
this route of that
mhm.
there's this place here, there's this place here, and she doesn't distinguish across religions. She actually includes Ajmer Sharif and Nizamuddin Aulia and other
Acha.
shrines. She said that is the linkage because Muslims from here will go to pilgrimage here, from other states will come to Ajmer Sharif for their pilgrimage. They'll people from the south will travel to temples in the north. So she says that yes, there's that civilizational underlayer, but you don't need to keep on harping on. This is my extrapolation from it.
Mhm.
That's there, that's underneath and that's there. That's not going anywhere. But the problem is that when you like the problem with China is 92% Han.
Yeah.
It can afford to instrumentalize its past to create an imagined future of that return to that past. India cannot. We are like a layer upon layer, like it's kind of a pastry. There have
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
layers upon layers upon layers upon layers that have been added. Han China has relatively seen very little influx from the outside. Mostly it has resisted it. Whichever areas, came under the influence of the Mongols or the Central Asians or whatever, or Tibetans, China annexed them. And now they are essentially vassal states to the main Han Empire, which is why China can afford to carry out the kind of exercises that it's doing in Xinjiang or Tibet, where they're oppressing people.
So, sort of, I mean, I'm not trying to cut you, but just something that. So, I used to think, not as articulate as you are, maybe, but I used to think on similar lines. But
Mhm.
over at least the last 6, 7 years, I'm seeing the current regime, if you will, many
Yeah,
of its steps that they've taken to quote unquote uniformalize India
yeah.
have been fairly successful. What I'm trying to say is that I always used to think, जब
Mhm.
से मेरा पॉलिटिकल ज्ञान समझना शुरू हुआ है, that
Yeah.
India has multiple cleavages, right? I mean, there is a whole caste that दुनिया में
Yes.
कहीं नहीं, the whole caste
Mhm.
angle, then
Mhm.
religion, ethnic linguism, all of that, right?
Mhm.
And yet I see, like, if you look at 2019 elections, I think that is the best parameter to kind of judge people and their mood. I see that even like UP, look at an example. Like, people were talking about BSP and SP coming together, and that uh, toppling the cartwheel because the caste equations won't work in BJP's favor. But it looks like that OBCs and a large part of the non-Jatav Dalit vote moved to BJP
Yeah.
instead of consolidating under Yadav and Mayawati. And so what I'm trying to say is that I feel they aren't as mm, they're not failing as I expected them to fail when they tried to go big tent. It seems like a lot of people are accepting their unique, similar identity. Even Bengal, which has historically prided itself in
Yeah.
its language, and it's falling hook, line, and sinker for all the North Indian traditional baits of Hindu nationalism. At least it seems to be right now. So what do you then, like, ये कैसे हो रहा है?
Well, some political scientist needs to come in, but from
I'm
my
sorry. I mean,
understanding,
ऐसे yeah.
because this is quite complicated, I think if anybody is listening here, I would also recommend to them to go and listen to this talk at the Center for Policy Research. They did this seminar, which included Shekhar Gupta, but also included Yogendra Yadav and one
अच्छा
other
हाँ
person
हाँ
I'm
हाँ
forgetting. There was a very interesting woman by the name of, I'm forgetting her name. There was a woman who did like a 10-15 minute talk,
mhm.
and she just completely broke apart how BJP wooed the lower caste and the OBCs and the vote.
तेजल कनटकर.
No, no, no. It was someone else. It was someone else. But anyways, this woman really, she said that what they did was they played different kind of cards. They would play a communal card in some places. Like they would try every single method. They would have these rallies which were like Ram Mandir rallies or whatever, which would play certain kind of music or songs with DJs, which would pass through streets, essentially trying to lure in people through that. Or they would go for the Kashmir narrative, or they would go for the Balakot narrative,
Mhm.
or in the run up to the 2019 election. Then they would try the Ujjwala scheme. They would try these other schemes that they've done, so many Mudra schemes and all of that, and the loan schemes and direct benefit transfers and whatever. And the I think the Ghar Awas Yojana scheme. There's another one which they've come up with,
Yeah,
which they have appropriated from previous governments. So
a lot
I
of them. Yeah.
think it would be a fallacy to think. I do agree, especially when you see on Twitter. Now, I think we can also include the Twitterverse here. If you see
Yeah.
just on Twitter and
My
the people
favorite
and
place
the
on the world.
yeah,
हाँ.
if you see on the Twitter world, you sometimes start thinking that the kind of people that you see and you interact with and the caliber of them and who they are, you think that they are just being attracted, that this is everybody is getting attracted just by the the message of this united India or whatever this identity is, this homogeneous identity. But if you see what happened on the ground, particularly during the general election, is that there was a delivery of schemes, and there was a very vociferous advertisement of the delivery of those schemes. And Rajdeep Sardesai, I was watching this seminar yesterday where I think he was speaking to Ram Guha at
Yeah, मैंने
Bangalore.
YouTube लिंक देखा,
Yeah,
वीडियो नहीं देखा अभी तक मैंने.
yeah, I saw it. So he actually said that these people, what they did was that everybody who got the scheme, so that woman said a lot of people did not even get impacted by those schemes. But what they did was that they had their people on the ground, they had their organization, they had their Panna Pramukhs who were literally doing the groundwork, were running around, seeing कि अच्छा आपको मिल गया है, इनको मिल गया है, अच्छा आपको मिल गया है ना, तो अब आप टेस्टिमोनियल दो या फिर आप कहो कि अच्छा आपको मिल गया है. And then they will go and project that to the other neighbors or to the other locality in the same village and to the next village. And it was a lot of promotion, and a lot of people voted for them in the hope that these services would come. So I would say they took the povertarian politics of someone like a Jayalalitha from Tamil Nadu, and they scaled it up. So it's a combination. It's a very clever political combination of many things. It's not just this homogenous identity. And I know on Twitter we just see a certain kind of people, but it's pretty complicated. As far as Bengal is concerned, I think what has happened is, I think Bengal is a special case. I'll treat it slightly differently. Let us be honest, Mamata Banerjee has played certain kind of
Yeah,
sectarian
definitely.
politics within the
Yeah,
state. There
yeah.
is no escaping that. Okay, she's as much a culprit. The communists did it before her. She has done it for the longest time. She's been and Bengal's politics has been very violent always. And the problem is that instead of the communists coming back and reinvigorating themselves, the BJP has moved in and has brought its kind of politics. So anybody who is unhappy with Mamata is now siding with the BJP. So you're having the Gorkhas in the North Bengal who are demanding Gorkhaland. I think BJP will probably be happy to, show them that lollipop, but never really grant them state status. And, they are trying to attack the Bihari migrants and the Jharkhand migrants who have come in West Bengal. So I think this was bound to happen at some point. So I think that's my understanding.
Yeah, there's one thing that being a Bengali, I'll
Yeah,
just
you might know more. Yes.
no, no. One thing, basically, the thing that worked up until the 30-year rule of communists was that
Yeah.
they the they had क्या बोलना चाहिए, they had taken up the whole, like, every Indian other Indian state has caste equations. What
Yeah.
they did was they had gulped the caste within them, so they kept
Yeah.
talking about this class war,
Yeah.
where when all of the communist leadership was very upper caste and like very educated, very upper caste, so it was not really reflective of the society. But because they kept talking about um, the class struggle, it really never, the appeasement जिसे हम आज पूरे
Yeah.
इंडिया में बात करते हैं, वैसा कभी ओवर्टली करने का जरूरत नहीं पड़ा. एंड टू क्या फेस दैट, ममता did this, where she started doing um, this very secular nature of politicking. And what
Yeah.
happened is that this helped her win election. This also helped, um, because essentially there was no opposition, and all of the poor people, caste backward caste people and Muslims went en masse into Mamta's bloc. And then the game was wide open in Bengal, and that is
Yeah.
only that is why BJP was able to get into Bengal with what BJP does, because Mamta opened the gates for her. And before this, in fact, I cannot quite remember. Someone did a great piece. I think it's on Scroll or somewhere,
Mhm.
on how this whole thing unfolded in Bengal. Um, I will try and link it to the episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's been 35 minutes that we've been talking about, and we
Yeah.
haven't started on our
Even. Yeah.
topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think what we are talking about kind of relates to
What
what
comes
our
next?
primary topic of the day is. And the primary topic of the day is basically CAB and NRC.
Yeah.
So I will ask you to talk about it a bit. And since we're already talking about how making making India uniformity of people will not really work out for India. So maybe talk about CAB NRC and talk about your point of view and talk about this whole idea where we are looking at a specific identity of Indians to call Indian and and others not so much Indian. So
Yeah.
let's start from there. So your take on CAB and NRC.
I think for the CAB and the NRC, so see I have always said that the CAB is the Trojan horse.
Hmm.
It's not as dangerous in itself, but
Hmm.
what it tags along behind it is much more dangerous, which is the NRC. So they have what they have done very cleverly. This government has done is that it has worded it quite, I won't say brilliantly, but quite cleverly, the stipulations of the bill that they brought in and the law that is now in existence, basically trying to say that this is preferential treatment for certain kind of persecuted minorities, but this is not really excluding anyone. This is the kind of logic that was being floated by the likes of Harish Salve and many others who support
Yeah.
them. I think the bigger issue and everybody is making this defense who is representing this government that, CAB is not problematic. I don't know why these liberals are seeing problems in it. My biggest issue is that given the actions of this government over the last 6 years, I see them using what it's bringing behind it, the NRC, as a tool of voter disenfranchisement. I think that's what the ultimate goal is. Everybody who's saying that second-class citizens and everything, Muslims are already second-class citizens in India. They already have plenty of discriminations. I think the
Yeah.
ultimate goal is one. I think is voter appropriation in states where the NRC issue can be played up. Assam and Bengal both go to the polls in 2021.
Okay.
So it'll be a major issue. I don't think they'll begin enacting it because there is a couple of reasons for that. In 2022, Modi has his big shining moment in global glory, where he will have the Gaganyaan, I think, which is going the space mission. Probably they are aiming
Yeah.
for that year. Then he has New India. I don't know what the hell that is. And then another event, which is flying low on the radar, but will be big in the international news, is India will be hosting the G20 summit in 2022.
Oh, really? 2022.
Yes, yes. So
Oh, interesting.
19 of the others and many other world leaders will be arriving in India, probably for dinner at Rashtrapati Bhavan Gardens. So
I cannot wait to see President
Modi,
Tom Steyer.
yes, yes. So I don't know if he'll be there or who will come, but
All in for
yeah,
Tom Steyer, my man.
yeah. So there is that's. I don't think they will begin enacting this bill yet. They'll wait for things to die down, and then as the general election comes close, 2024, depending upon how things turn out, I think a year before that, maybe they could start rolling out the NRC and enacting it, and then you could see, it's a government exercise at the end of the day. You have to submit papers or whatever you have to do. Everybody will be submitting papers, and then you might see things happening to voter rolls and God knows what else. This is pure conjecture. This is purely me,
Mhm.
but I think this could probably play out in that way. I don't think there will be a mass. I've always said that India is not going to mimic even these people. They don't have the resources. They don't have the money. They don't have anything. These people, Muslims in India, cannot go anywhere. Nobody will accept them. The idea is to further disenfranchise them and to hamper their voting rights, maybe at least for the next general election. But that's how I see it. That's the worst part of this entire bill. It's CAB is the Trojan horse, but the bigger peril is NRC, and I think
So,
that's the biggest risk.
uh, for the benefit of or everyone who's listening, and um, Asia knows, I guess, but for everyone else, so CAB is essentially a bill that has been brought to and passed through Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha
Yeah,
now, which basically makes it easier for quote undocumented immigrants from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan
Yes.
to get Indian citizenship. It makes
Yes.
it easier for them to get Indian citizenship, which does
Mhm.
not mean that others cannot apply for
Yeah.
it.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
yeah. The thing that people I mean people who are reading it find the most interesting is that this has been bought because there are religious minorities who are being persecuted in countries around India. I'm talking about. This is not my opinion. This is the government's opinion, and
Mhm.
maybe they are, maybe they are not. But so that is why it's being brought out, and this is being also linked to partition, where Islamic theocracies, one Islamic theocracy was created out of India, which has now divided itself into two countries, and so the historic injustice of partition, which Amit uncle says that was due to
Yeah.
Congress, needs
Yeah.
to be corrected. So then my question is, Afghanistan kahan se aaya? And my second question is कि if we are talking about all persecuted minorities, what about Myanmar?
I'm surprised, Raj, you are not aware that Akhand Bharat exists, extends all the way from the Amu Darya to the Mekong. If you see on Twitter, haven't you seen those maps?
I do, but like,
In fact, it's probably bigger than that. I've seen it extend all the way from Afghanistan to Vietnam and Indonesia. But anyways, I think how Afghanistan comes into it is heaven knows what kind of logic.
right?
But I think maybe they can make this argument on the basis of that India's political map shows Afghanistan has a small border with India. And so
Oh,
technically it's a
okay.
neighbor. Yes, technically it's a neighbor. Although
But
in reality
Myanmar?
it's not. Myanmar, they will not include because see Amit Shah has stood in parliament and made it quite clear that it applies to Islamic republics or Islamic states or states which have Islam as an official religion. So I think he really made that huge mistake when he referred to Bangladesh as a um, I think
Bangladesh
theocracy.
considers itself secular, right?
Yes,
The
so
nation
for a
state.
period in between they did go the wrong way during military
अरे
dictatorships.
रॉन्ग वे कैसे बोल सकते हो? हाँ, यहाँ हम हिंदू राष्ट्र बनने चले हैं, वो रॉन्ग वे हो गया, गलत बात।
नहीं वो तो डेफिनेटली रॉन्ग है हमारा ऑलवेज राइट है बट
अच्छा।
एनीवेज इन बोथ वेज बट uh, today it's secular. They do have an official state religion. There's no denying it. Like
Hmm.
uh,
So
they do say
I
Islam is.
I I understand the BJP's idea of including Afghanistan and not including Myanmar. Um, so another quick question, and I don't know if if you'll be able to answer it, but this is just something that I've been thinking about. Doesn't this, like, putting this thing on ground, making this
Mhm,
happen, does it
mhm.
not, will it not require a considerable investment from the government,
A lot of money. I think
right?
conducting the NRC, you'll need state resources. You know, it's like a census. But I think who will handle these? How will these be submitted? Will they be setting up special offices? Which offices will be doing the work? Who will be processing the applications? 1.3, like I don't know how many applications would have to be submitted, and everyone will have to do it. Who will be managing the applications? Which is why I said that the forget about the CAB. So right now, let me look at the just the CAB part. I won't even get to the NRC.
Mhm.
That who will be handling these applications? But I think it is much more of a the CAB is relatively less headache for the government. I think they can still handle it. The NRC is the bigger problem. Who will be managing that exercise, which they plan to apparently now implement across India?
So,
But I think they need a lot of
so CAB will not require. Will CAB require any?
additional
I mean,
resources. I know.
because so I was reading on Meghna did a piece on this, right?
Mhm.
And I was reading upon it, and um, basically this will, the CAB at least will facilitate pathway for citizenship for 31,000 people.
Yeah.
And considering the size of India, 31,000 seems such a small number to fuss about, man. I mean, I just I know मैं पॉलिसी लेवल पे सोच रहा हूँ और यहाँ पे इनका गोल कुछ और है, but
Yeah.
it's 31,000. Like, at the end of the day, it's just very surprising for me. Uh, so anyway,
Mhm.
related next thing that happens with this
Mhm.
is there ever since this was tabled in Lok Sabha, and then now it was tabled in Lok Sabha on December 10th, I think, or
Yeah.
9th, and
Yes.
then yesterday, that we are recording it on 13 December, so 12th December it was tabled in Rajya Sabha and it passed.
Yeah.
And there have been massive protests across the Northeast,
Mhm.
which is a very strange thing for me to see, because, as you know, I live and die on Twitter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And there is this whole huge liberal echo chamber in Twitter,
Yeah.
and these people are very happy about the protests that are happening in
Are
Northeast.
you sure
When
they are happy? Because
I
I've
don't
also
know,
seen I've seen different reactions. Like I've also
I
seen I've seen a variance of reactions. Like it's not
so
just
so overall, at least this is the impression that I got, that overall that they seem to be happy that this is happening. But my
Mhm.
question is, isn't that isn't that as scarier? Because
Yeah, it is.
essentially they're protesting for their ethno subnationalism, right?
Yes, yes.
So could you just elaborate on why they are protesting, and why does it hurt them so much?
Well, I think historically, this is I think we can even apply this to the Kashmir question, that when these states acceded to the union, they acceded under certain terms and conditions. We think, Northeast came as a package to India, and we always had these borders. If somebody would actually, if these people would actually go and study the history, and they would see how these states became a part of India. The accession processes were quite complex, and there were many assurances and guarantees that had to be given to these states to become a part of India. And if anybody's interested, there's a book by a person called Berenice Guyo-Richard, which is called Shadow States, which just deals with Arunachal and how Arunachal became a part of India. Basically, these tribes in the border areas, they weren't sure which way they'd go. They could have even gone with Myanmar, they could have gone with China, border states. They were not sure. They would go in and out of the sphere of influence. But finally, there were assurances given, to become a part of India. Some were a part of British India, but like they were quite, uh, you know, independent in some ways,
It's
and
with
not.
Nagaland, for example.
Yeah, Nagaland, Manipur also, Mizos, they consider themselves very much part of the Burmese tribes. They consider themselves far less Indian. And I think the problem with the Northeast is that, there are just too many tribes. It's too tribal. There are a whole lot of ethnicities. And you really can't peg it down. You can't, there's ethno subnationalism, yes. Within Assam, there are so many tribes. There are the Bodos, there are the Ahoms, there are multiple tribes, and within Nagas themselves, there are multiple tribes. Within Manipuris, there are tribes, within Arunachal, there are hundreds of tribes. There are so many different tribes. So I think that there has always been a traditional lack of understanding in mainland India for the Northeast. I remember every time something would happen in Kashmir, Barkha would catch the next flight to Srinagar and turn up there and start giving a vox pop reaction saying, I'm reporting for ground zero and this has happened in Kashmir. But when something would happen in the Northeast, nobody would bother going there. They would have some, reports coming like 2 days later, or maybe, I think the only NDTV had one reporter called Kishaloy Bhattacharya, I think that was his name,
Mhm.
reporting from the Northeast. Otherwise, I don't remember any of the major channels having any
It's not
report.
sexy enough, man. You know, right?
Maybe, yes.
And
But
it has a lot of nuance, I guess.
yeah, it requires a lot of.
ये एक पूरा एक दूसरा एपिसोड हो सकता है, जिसके मेरे दिमाग में आइडिया वो बेसिकली क्या है कि हमारे जो लीडिंग लाइट्स हैं जर्नलिज्म के, वो भी
Yeah,
इतने प्रिविलेज्ड हैं कि
yeah,
उनको इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट फॉर देम टू वे एंड नुआंस के साथ बात करें, लाइक बरखा दत्त के लिए कश्मीर जाके उसके बारे में बात करना इज सो मच इजियर देन टू गो इनटू नागालैंड और मिजोरम एंड देन
yeah.
ब्रेक इट डाउन फॉर द पीपल. एनीवे, आई एम सॉरी,
I understand there are people who have their own, interests. Like everybody has certain. I don't begrudge Barkha, but I'm just saying that she's representative. She's symptomatic. It's fine. She can cover Kashmir if she wants to, but everybody does that. Like everybody is rushing in this, catching the same set of flights to Srinagar and just covering this. I haven't seen any of these people from Delhi catch the flight and say, I'll, you see what's going on over the last 3 days. Have you seen any reporter from the mainland say, let me catch the next flight to Guwahati and go and cover this on the ground? Nobody has done it.
No.
Everybody is sitting in Delhi. Had it been Kashmir, did you see the amount of flights these people took to Kashmir
Yeah,
to
of
Kashmir?
course.
And who has gone to the northeast to cover what is happening on the ground? So I think that is symptomatic. I can agree that there's ethno subnationalism, but I think they're also, and this is one of my problem with the liberals here. I agree. I don't think this is cause for celebration. I think this is terrible for the people,
Of course, of course.
ethnic people, and this is also terrible for the migrants because I think people. I don't know. There is all this talk about the massacre of Sikhs. There's a talk about the Gujarat massacre. Who talks about the massacre that happened in Assam in 1983, the year before the Sikh riots, where, according to government sources, 2,200 people were killed, and these were Muslim Bengalis and Hindu Bengalis
Hindu Bengalis,
and,
yeah.
and Muslim Bengalis, Hindu Bengalis, and Bihari Hindus who were killed in this massacre. 2,200 according to official sources. Nobody knows the actual figure because that report has never been made public, but they claim up to 10,000 people. And these were women and children included. So it's like general amnesia. You ask people on the I see these people on the Twitter going, why are these Assamese going crazy? Why are they agitating? I'm like, well, you don't know the history of that state and you don't know that the government signed an accord with them. Whether we like it or not, the government of India signed an accord in 1985 with the people of Assam saying that all the migrants who came after 1971 will not be given citizenship. And now this is shifting the goalposts under CAB. So CAB is problematic for the rest of India, but for the region itself, it's hugely problematic because these people. Yesterday, I
Is it?
saw someone.
Hmm.
Yeah,
No, go on, go on, go on.
yesterday I saw someone from the Tripura royal family. I think his last name is Burman. He was on
Ah,
NDTV, and he said we have, and this is true. These people have become minorities within their own state. He said we are today 32% of our state, and
Tripura.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, no, no, I know. Tripura
yeah,
has is now basically chota, like it's West Bengal
yeah.
B basically. That's
Yeah.
what Tripura is. Yeah.
So I think that this is a universal discussion. How much immigration is too much immigration? And the people of Northeast, I don't think they are not, I think they have made some, and this person was not, the person from the royal family was not being, completely illiberal and saying that, we don't want these people. He said, we have taken, if we think that there was immigration from Bengal just in one phase, it has been happening over hundreds of years to the entire Northeast. It has been happening under British India. It has been happening even a little before that. And then, in successive waves, it has been happening. And now it's reached a point where these people say enough is enough. And this is true of Europe. It's happened in the US. It's happening globally, this discussion about how much immigration is too much immigration. And you can't
Yeah.
really begrudge those people.
No, no. I
Yeah.
think the ultimately it's about resources, and ultimately
Yes.
the question is who has the first right on resources.
Yes.
Uh,
And I'm not even saying first right. But he actually proposed, this person said, okay, take these people in if you want to legalize them. Why don't you distribute them to the rest of the states in India? And this is a very interesting argument because during the 50s and the 60s, 70s, when the Tibetan refugees came to India, there were multiple states who took them in and gave them
yeah.
land and gave them resources and said, it won't just be the border states who will take them in. They got land in Tamil Nadu, they got land in Karnataka to set up monasteries. Multiple places took in Tibetan refugees. So why can't this be done for them? He said we have taken quite a few already, and we are saying that the people who came until 71 would be accepted. Now you have a legal accord with us, and you are sidestepping it and saying that all these people would be legalized. So that's problematic.
And going back on our words, especially like looking at recently 370 and the article of
Yeah,
session there, and
yeah,
now this,
yeah.
uh, I and again, I just don't know. I just feel that we will see how this ends up unfolding in the next 5-10 years. We cannot comment on it right now because
Mhm.
even Kashmir, even today, Kashmir, like Kashmiris, however much prominent they are, in the sense ki ट्विटर पे कश्मीर के बारे में बात करने वाले या न्यूज पे कश्मीर के बारे में बात करने वाले, वी डोंट स्टिल नो हाउ द कश्मीरीज आर रिएक्टिंग और आर गोइंग टू रिएक्ट बिकॉज दैट स्टेट इज स्टिल locked down, right? So it will be interesting to see how these things are managed, and a part of me is really afraid
Yeah.
that we are looking at a very turbulent future. Another thing that is connected to this is, so Shinzo Abe was
Yeah.
planning to meet Kaka
Yeah. Yes.
or Papa, however you like,
Mhm.
in Guwahati, and then I think he is cancelled on the trip. So, do
I
you
think they
think that
postponed
there
it.
will be more
Mhm.
diplomatic fallout of this?
I think so. One, not from Japan. I think eventually a summit will happen, or maybe it'll happen early next year or something.
Mhm.
The Japanese will keep on sending in money. The problem is that a lot of the Japanese investment that is going in, I think so far it's already been $2 billion, and a lot of it
Mhm.
is on infrastructure development in the Northeast. It has happened under peacetime. It's
Mhm.
happened under normal conditions. If things go south in the Northeast, will the Japanese money be as effective? Will it keep on coming in? It might come in, but then it might stall. The projects might not get completed. Japan also offers a lot of aid through. It's the majority shareholder, I think, in the Asian Development Bank. So it offers a lot of grants and aids essentially for these projects through by sending money and through direct aid also. So I think projects could get stalled. That is on the Japanese side. I don't think Japan much cares about the other part of it. It doesn't really interfere on that side. From Bangladesh, I think
Yeah, I think there was some statement, and some Bangladeshi
yeah.
foreign minister or
So
someone has gone back or something, right?
two I think cancellations. I think one was the Bangladeshi foreign minister who cancelled a visit to Delhi, and there was another visit I think of the Bangladeshi home minister or another minister who was supposed to visit Shillong for some commemoration of the 71 war, some kind of commemoration of the liberation
Okay.
of Bangladesh, and that was also cancelled. And they haven't really said why they cancelled it, but there are two parts of essentially statements made by our honorable home minister in the parliament which pricked them. One was calling Bangladesh theocratic, which it is not. It has a state religion, but it is essentially a secular country. Sheikh Hasina Wajid has, in fact, she has been one of India's closest allies. There's no denying
Exactly.
it. She's almost a plant of India in some ways, but
That's what Bangladeshis say.
yeah, because she the what is her name? Khalida Zia has not been contesting elections because India has kind of been
97%
supporting.
vote.
Yeah, India has kind of been backing Sheikh Hasina Wajid to stay in power. So she's one of India's strongest allies in the entire region, and this is quite humiliating to her because obviously this press, we sometimes see ourselves. This Twitterverse and this government sees itself in a bubble. But I remember during the Maharashtra crisis, there were people from Kathmandu and Thimphu sitting and newspaper editors tweeting about the shit show that was happening in India and saying, "Look at the magic of the world's largest democracy." It was just during the whole Devendra Fadnavis fiasco,
I
and
think
I tweeted about that, and I was like, I put those two screen captures by these two editors, and I said, "This is what the rest of the region is thinking about India." And even in Dhaka, I'm sure Sheikh Hasina is getting pushback on this. That these kind of statements are being given by the chief minister that Hindus are persecuted in Bangladesh, and it's a theocratic state, and I'm sure she got pushback. So they had to send some kind of diplomatic signal. I think the more problematic future part for Bangladesh is that at some point in the future, when things will really go south as far as climate change is concerned,
mhm.
what will
Yeah,
happen to all
yeah.
the Bangladeshi migrants who might come in? I think that's really a big question. Nobody has thought of
I don't think Bangladesh is thinking of it. I don't think India is thinking of
that.
it.
Nobody's
Uh,
thinking of.
and as to your last point, I think this government, and more so the honorable prime minister,
Mhm.
cares a lot about how his government and his image is in the Western media,
Yeah,
especially the white media. Basically, by Western
yeah,
media, that is
yeah.
what I mean. They don't really, or he doesn't really care about anything else. He doesn't really care about. He cares about what is being said about him in India, but again,
Mhm.
it's most of the Indian media is very pliable, and
Mhm.
he really. looks at what is being said about
outside
him in America,
in the West.
especially
Yeah.
America. So this is like our primer on CAB and NRC. I also wanted to talk to you broadly
Mhm,
about how you see all of these things play out in the future. So in 2024 and beyond, how
mhm,
there is a massive economic crisis staring
yeah.
at us.
Mhm,
There is clearly we need more stability in terms of people to people relationships within our country.
yeah.
And so how do you see these things play out in the next 10, 15 years, internal and foreign policy way?
Um, let's begin with the internal.
Yeah.
I think on the internal front, I mean, so far they seem all set to come back to par in 2024. I don't know if Modi will come or you know Amit Shah will come,
अरे मुझे बहुत
but I
धक्का लगा भी 3 दिन पहले मुझे पता चला कि अमित शाह इज ओनली 55।
yeah, he's
मेरे
fairly
को
young.
उसको मुझको उसको देख के लगा कि he's like 67 68। मुझे लगा मोदी जाएगा 2 3 साल बाद, ये भी पीछे पीछे साला वो 12 साल छोटा है मोदी से, मतलब सर 12 साल छोटे हैं, यंग।
I think all
he's
that adipose tissue is hiding how he's young
एक
actually.
आई मीन I फिर भी मतलब you know they have availability of the best healthcare in the world।
Yeah,
उसके
yeah.
बाद भी आ, क्या 75 20 साल देता हूँ मैं शाह जी को और
Yeah, but I don't know if 2024 he will take over. I mean, maybe Modi might come for another term. Who knows?
as long as Modi is alive, he unless he is like completely like Vajpayee himself,
I
कि he
think
is not.
who
हाँ,
said some. I think Rajdeep Sardesai said, "Who knows? He might do a president for life thing and do a Putin on all of us." But I don't know if that's possible according to the
mm,
constitution. But
it will,
that's,
his a prime minister can eventually become a president, right? If he wants to. Like, let's say he gives up and Amit Shah becomes the prime minister. Can Amit Shah appoint him as the president?
yeah, but then he doesn't have any power unless he changes the constitution and says that the
So,
president now is the power and prime minister is just a political appointee.
अरे शशि थरूर बहुत खुश हो जाएगा इससे, पता है तुम्हें?
Q? He wants to be president.
हाँ, ये- तो कह रहे इन ये शशि थरूर का मैं बहुत बड़ा फैन हूँ, बहुत पहले से।
अच्छा,
तो याद है आज 2006-7 के आसपास ही टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में एडिटोरियल लिखा करते थे।
अच्छा, okay.
तब he wrote this long essay on why India should move from the
Oh, yeah, he
Westminster
said
style
that,
to
yeah.
American style.
A presidential system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he has
yeah.
this desire to be the president of India, like the American president of America type. So,
I don't know what
but
logic he
I
has. Yeah, never.
he's different. He's different.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a Hindu. Okay, never forget.
I don't know what he is.
He's a Hindu
He's
above
posh.
anything else.
I think.
So, but the thing is, going back to Shah and Modi, what I think is my understanding of Narendra Modi at least is that he will not give up on power as long as his mind is willing, body meaning mind is willing, and when that is done, he'd still want to live in
Yeah.
Rashtrapati Bhavan. I think.
I mean,
Uh,
I think he has a big sense of himself. I think he thinks of himself as something like a Lee Kuan Yew or a, you
he's
know,
narcissist, but like
he
again,
thinks like I'm some Mahathir Mohammed or something. I will continue till 95 or something.
he might. I mean,
But you know,
he'd
you
stay,
never know.
he'd live. I mean, in the sense,
Yeah.
क्या
He
योगा
also
वोगा
quite
देखा है
active
इन्होंने
for his age,
860
so
योगा
don't
का।
think that. Yeah. So I won't be surprised. But I think on the internal front, I frankly, I don't see an opposition challenge right now, unless they are undid from their own actions, and then maybe we get a khichdi government, which isn't bad. Um, but I think the internal front, yeah, I don't see anybody rising. I think Mamta will be spending the next 2 3 years just defending her own turf and making sure that
हाँ,
she
she's
fends them off of Bengal because that's her core interest right now. I think in the south, what I think DMK will stay there. I think the south is one bastion that is very difficult for the BJP to break, but who knows? Anything is possible, you know.
no.
And
So my question is, how do you? So this is, I mean, the government. So let's assume
yeah,
you and I both agree on this. I
yeah,
don't see BJP losing out in 2024. I 2029 is too far in the
yeah.
future for now to even comment on.
Mhm.
But So let me paraphrase. Let me rephrase my question and say something before that. I remember about 3 years ago, right after demonetization, there was this India Today conclave happening, and they had invited Chidu Kaka
Hmm.
in the conclave, and they asked him about this, and he said, and this is just something that I always keep saying. He said that his understanding of economics can be written on the backside of a postage stamp,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But people still think that he'll be the one messiah. So
yeah.
if he continues through 2024 and beyond, how do you see India shaping up? Is, I guess, my question.
I think India, and this also is how the world begins to see India. Then the foreign policy aspect comes in. I think if the economic story keeps on failing, ultimately the question is, will people just keep on punishing state governments and they won't punish his government? And then from the outside, people will say, okay, India is a lame duck. Let's move on to the next story. That's what will begin to happen, and growth will keep on slowing. We'll become another Brazil. I think Ratin Roy spoke about the middle income trap for India. We'll become another Brazil, South Africa, just one of those BRICS countries, which could be but never was. Will become another one of those failure stories, like a Turkey or something. A middle power, middle income country that and these people have great notions of where they wish to see India. But where I see India going, I mean, I don't see any kind of vision in this government about planning on climate change, about water resources, about what I mean. Forget about. Have you seen any urgency about what will happen? We just had this crisis this year in Chennai. Have you seen
Yeah,
any
exactly.
urgency? The city practically ran out of water. Have you seen any kind of discussion that if we have a really bad drought here, what will happen? If there is a crisis of water across metropolitan centers and in the countryside, who will get water? How much? How will you arrange for it? I mean, there's no thinking of water resources. There's no thinking of pollution in rivers. There's no thinking about air pollution. There's no foresight whatsoever on anything, and the focus is just on the wrong things. And things will keep on going south in multiple ways. It will begin to impact tourism. I was seeing on Twitter all these videos of foreign tourists who are coming to Delhi wearing masks. Who will come to India then? The story will ultimately keep on going south, 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 till you don't have people coming, till tourism starts slipping, people don't come. You think only Delhi will be impacted with bad air? Jaipur will get bad air. Rajasthan sees so much tourism. So much of the economy depends on tourism. What will happen? People won't come. They'll be like, why should I land in Delhi? Why should I even come to North India? Kerala is fine for me. So you'll begin to lose money left, right, and center. And tourism is just one industry. It'll be in other places. People won't want to invest. This government has been so hostile. This entire, if you just see in the run up to this parliament session, which has completely been hijacked by CAB and NRC, all the headlines were about the tanking economy. And as soon as they
Yeah.
introduced CAB and NRC, the
That's gone.
headlines have just been replaced. That's just gone. That's the entire focus has been deflected again. That's classic Modi Shah tactic. Deflect, deflect, deflect wherever possible. Lead people in the other direction. And the finance ministry honestly has no clue. They have inherited a mess from the previous term, and I think she's just in shell shock because she doesn't know what to do. She has inherited such a mess that she's still trying to figure out. She's like one of those employees, hapless employees, who has walked into a terrible job and then is trying to figure things out. And honestly, she doesn't have the potential, I think, to do much. But and she's inherited a mess in any case.
So,
So I think foreign investors will just stop sending money in. Things will keep on going bad, bad, bad. But like I said, and they'll always pull a rabbit out of the hat around an election, and I've told you which rabbit it will be around 2023. So yeah,
so basically, there is this there is this term that is used in management or strategy that's called dead catting. I don't know if you've heard about
I've
dead
not heard
catting.
of
Is basically the introduction of a dramatic, shocking, or a sensational topic to
it.
divert discourse away from a more
Yeah,
damaging topic.
yeah,
So essentially, this is without knowing these people are master of dead catting. The thing that to talk, I'll talk about economy, and I have a question tangential to economy, but something that I have noticed through the years with the way Mr. Modi operates is even in Gujarat, where Amit Shah was and is still one of his closest allies. Remember that even in Gujarat, Amit Shah was never a cabinet rank minister. He was a state minister of home.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Modi had all the important portfolios, and of course he cannot do that when he's the prime minister because it's a bigger news.
Yeah.
But the reason that someone like Nirmala Sitaraman or a Piyush Goyal, these people who are basically lightweight, who like they cannot win an election apne dum pe, literally, are
Mhm.
appointed as ministers of such important ministries is because even though the person is a megalomaniac and a narcissist, it all comes from a deep sense of inferiority complex,
Insecurity.
and he'd be very and that is why it's the relationship between Modi and Shah is very fascinating to me, because Shah is one of those people who actually, in terms of जैसे कहते हैं ना political power in the country, I think he could potentially wield as much political power as Modi, and yet Modi somehow tolerates क्या more than tolerates him, right?
Yeah.
And that like कब तक ये होगा is something that I think will be fascinating, because I know for everyone else they think Modi and Shah are like this Jain Viru,
Mhm.
but in Modi's world there is no Viru. In Modi's world it's all a one man show. So it will be interesting to see how this unfolds. Going back to economy, something fast, and again this is from Twitter, so don't take
Mhm.
it too seriously. But something that I found very fascinating was some people. Um, there was this whole narrative that was built on Twitter ki how traditional Indian cuisine does not contain onion at all. And
Mhm.
by traditional Indian cuisine, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I immediately thought ki bhai, how much of their personal right, liberty, जो भी बोलो, they are willing to give in exchange of, I don't know, whatever this false sense of pride that they feel by having Modi be the leader of this country. Because literally, I saw a very famous journalist from the right
Mhm.
point that how traditional Kashmiri and Bengali food contains no pyaz, and I was like, fuck me. And uske baad there were Bengalis from, again, the right wing ecosphere, commenting, yeah, that's true. Actually, if you like look at the non-veg preparation in Bengali food, even the non-veg does not contain onion. It is a Muslim influence and all of that. So I was like, क्या क्या के लिए इन लोग spin करेंगे? And my question to you is कि if there is economic hardship, if there are problems, is there a threshold beyond which people start to complain, or is there no threshold? I mean, I guess there is obviously a threshold, but like, where is that threshold?
I honestly don't know where that threshold is. There is there is
Yeah,
something
I know it's a
my theory. This is just I think we have our, maybe not our present generation, but the future generations of India have become TikTok generations. They can be distracted with anything. Okay, it's like even if things are going south, there's always something to entertain you and make you happy in life. So even if things keep going south, there's no politician which India has seen yet, right, left, center, anywhere, who has the gumption to come and tell the young people of India who are not getting jobs, who are not getting better wages. Wages have not increased. I remember when I left India all that time ago, when I started like first working out of college,
hmm
I'm pretty sure the wages have stayed exactly the same, and it's been more than like what, a decade since. I don't think
Same.
wages have moved in India at all. They are exactly the inflation has gone up, everything has become more expensive, cost of living has gone up, but wages haven't moved. Forget about no new job generation. Even the wages are not moving. So, and I'm surprised people, you don't see people agitating for that. You don't see people, saying that things are not improving. You see people busy in Facebook, you see people busy in WhatsApp, you see people busy on Twitter, and you see people making TikTok videos, younger generations. And I think it comes out in two ways. Either it comes in sectarian violence, or it comes in anger at other people, or it comes out in ethnic violence, or whatever, or agitations for reservations, like the Jat agitation or something on the streets, where it'll come out in small ways. It'll get expressed, but there will not be a coherent recognition across the board in India that things have gone so far south, we need to agitate, which I think these people have become masters. Like you say, they've appropriated the WhatsApp sphere. You know, every
Of
morning
course.
are getting messages and and circulating stuff and everything, and how great things are going. And I saw a Twitter message yesterday from someone. I don't remember his name, but I think it was written below. No matter whatever happens, I will always support
Ha 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 ha.
because there is no other option. I will never vote. I think it was against Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi was being attacked left, right, and center over the last day because of Smriti ji. But the person said as much. He was like, no matter whatever happens, there's no other option, and I will always support this man.
See, I know you say, I mean, as in someone says that, but at the end of the day, if you're not able to bring food to the table, there has to. So you brought up a very interesting point because I ऑनेस्टली मैंने उसके बारे में ज़्यादा सोचा नहीं था जब 2010 में मैं व्हेन आई ग्रेजुएटेड फ्रॉम माय इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज
Yeah,
मिडलिंग प्राइवेट इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज इन सेंट्रल इंडिया
yeah,
where most of the kids end up going into Infosys TCS type jobs.
yeah,
A fresh Infi TCS guy would get 3.5 per annum lakh per annum,
yeah.
and they still get the same in 2019, 10 years down the line.
Yeah,
And uh, every time that I visit India, I feel the food prices, at least if you want to go and eat out, the prices are almost same as America,
yeah.
even converting for dollar.
I
And
had friends who keep going, and they keep on saying India is becoming more expensive. I'm like, yeah, right, it is.
it is, and I don't know how people manage. Like this is a question that I keep thinking about. How do these kids? How do people manage? And yet, the most vociferous supporters, because people who use Twitter, people who use social media, do not have problems of access. So they come from us like इंडिया में मिडिल क्लास का डेफिनेशन भी एक तो बहुत ही पोरस है बट
Yeah,
लाइक
yeah.
देयर हैज टू बी सम एस्पिरेशंस बट आई जस्ट डोंट अंडरस्टैंड एंड दिस हैज honestly boggled me when will they get angry कब खोलेगा इनका खून फैजल आई डोंट नो so I think we've basically covered everything that I had set out in our
Mhm.
initial agenda. Maybe before we close out, specifically from foreign policy, do you see any foreign governments? अभी तो US UK both.
Mhm.
I don't think, but like, do you see any foreign government putting any pressure vis-a-vis the social conditions in India?
Um,
Any foreign reaction to anything that is happening in India, or is India too unimportant at this stage for anybody to care?
Honestly, the world is too busy dealing with its own problems. That said, I will flag two things. I think if the things in Northeast go really bad, and I hope they don't. Everybody hopes for the best. But if they go bad, then I think, if there's any kind of impact on Bangladesh in terms of they see an influx of people, they are already handling refugees from Myanmar, the Rohingyas. So if there is an international exodus across the border from India towards Bangladesh, it will become an internationalized issue. And you saw what's her name, Aung San Suu Kyi, being dragged to the Hague by these countries. I don't think, unlike
What a fall
Myanmar,
from grace.
yeah, unlike Myanmar, which is an easy target for the OIC, India is not an easy target for, um, you know, for them, for OIC to approach the ICC and say that, the ICJ and say that, prosecute India for actions against these people, because the Saudi Arabia and UAE others won't move on it. They have investments in India. India is one of their biggest clients in terms of oil. So I don't see that happening. But what I do see happening is that maybe resolutions being moved at the UN, at the behest of China, or who knows. Bangladesh, we sometimes think Bangladesh has very good ties with India. Bangladesh also has a very strong growing relationship with China. So someone could table a resolution at the UN saying criticize India. That kind of backlash could be there. The other backlash that could be seen in the future against India, if they don't sort out this air pollution problem, at some point there will be. I hope, I pray that's the only way to set India on the right path. I hope one of our neighboring countries drags India to some kind of tribunal saying, they need to be sorted out for polluting the air. So that's my best case scenario. These are two counts on which India is vulnerable.
The
But
thing I
otherwise,
find,
yeah,
no, I was just saying the thing that I find fascinating is that there are two things, right? I mean, countries do not say anything because India has some economic value for them.
yeah,
India is a huge market, and and for someone who has authoritative tendencies, who wants to create an authoritarian state, his grip on economics is far too weak. I mean, even fascist Germany was a very strong economic country,
yeah,
and like this is like the ship is sinking, and
yeah,
that we are fighting standing in that ship, sinking ship. And at some point one thing has to give, right? At some point the economic value of India in the global stage will fall to below a certain threshold, after which people like other countries will just start pointing fingers. I mean, I know that by the end of 2020 the per capita income of Bangladesh will be above Indians per capita income of India. What will you like? क्या मुंह दिखाओगे दुनिया को?
No, I've said there's this very interesting piece by Umair Ahmed, this historian who I think he posted a piece. He did a piece a few years ago where he said, a lot of these comparisons of their ideology for the RSS and the BJP might be based in fascist Germany, in fascist Italy, or in Germany. But the essential idea is that a lot of the tactics that they are using, they are actually copying the Communist Party of China. So a lot of this
Mhm.
historical revisionism of this idea, it's not racial, but it's like this civilizational concept, and we are this large Hindu identity, similar to the Han identity that China is trying to impose. And there are many other ideas that this idea that we are a wronged people. China has the century of humiliation. India has scaled that
Yeah.
up millennia of humiliation. Ever since
Mm.
Muslims came, we have been oppressed.
Humiliated.
So we have been humiliated. So they are actually copying the Chinese in that respect. But the problem is that before the Chinese, Deng Xiaoping did this, where he said this famous quote of his where he says, bide your time, hide your capabilities, keep your head down or something like that, and nurse your vengeance. It's essentially a guidance that he gave to the Chinese, that develop yourself to the extent and then explode. That is what the Chinese did. China
Yeah.
developed itself to it. When in 2008 China's economy was India's size, China was growing at about 14% per year. That's how fast rapidly China was growing, and it saw rapid acceleration. And that's why it was able to project its power out to the world. With India, what has happened is that even before you've reached at China's level at 2008, but the problem is that you've started flying even before your feathers have come in. So it's this overestimation of your abilities which has set in. They are already thinking we are a world power when you are not. You still have very limited capabilities. You have an army. You can't even dominate the Indian Ocean region. The PLA Navy is coming in. They are growing much faster. Their budget annually is 4 times India's budget. India's defense budget, for those who are listening, is actually dropping, and it has stalled. The modernization process has stalled, and 54% of our budget is just going to personal costs. So this
Salaries and stuff.
modernization and everything, we are running way behind. The PLA Navy is weaponizing way faster. And if you listen to these trolls on Twitter, they'll tell you China is a paper tiger, and this is this, and this is all imagined threat, and nothing will happen, and India can sort them out, and we have taught the Chinese a lesson. But the Chinese have changed the rules of the game. They have developed cyber warfare. They've developed psychological warfare. They've developed economic warfare. There are many strategies that the Chinese use. They don't need to go to war to India, war with India to defeat us. They have multiple
अगर
tools.
हम डिफेंस में पैसा नहीं खर्च कर रहे हैं तो फिर कोल्ड स्टार्ट डॉक्ट्रिन का क्या होगा?
That's all BS. India really
जी डेविल पे उंगली मत उठाना मेरे भाई.
no. But it's just we are really lagging behind in a lot of things. That could be a whole separate thing. But I don't know what they are. A lot of personnel costs. They are acquiring things slowly, gradually, but there have been a lot of missteps. And also, there's India has created its own set of industry in India. They are trying to push this make in India, defense production in India. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's more or less failed. The traditional companies we don't have the capital, we don't have the human capital, we don't have the knowledge, the know-how, the people who will, produce those weapons in India. And these organizations like DRDO and others are selling duds like that LCA project, which has been
Mhm.
light combat aircraft, which has been under construction since development since forever, and now it's being sold. There's this Akash missile which has been developed, which the army has now said is completely useless. It's been in development for like 20 years or something. So it's like that projects, nothing is going anywhere. It's like state-run enterprises. Nothing has been privatized. There's been no economic reforms. This government has spent its entire political capital on social agendas, entirely, and nothing on labor reform, nothing on political, on police reform, nothing on police reform, nothing on judicial reform, nothing on economic, nothing has been done, all bluster.
Do do you I mean and again इस पे हम पूरा एक इंडिया द साइकी ऑफ द नेशन ऑफ इंडिया के ऊपर भी
Yeah.
हम एक पूरा एपिसोड कर सकते हैं बट समटाइम्स आई थिंक दैट वी एज अ नेशन सफर फ्रॉम ओवर एस्टिमेशन ऑफ आवर वर्थ
Oh yeah.
overestimation of our actual worth. And I think it comes from some sort of historical inferiority complex, we have been, which we do not need to have, but we have because of the parent forces of BJP and like people who kept mentioning that we've basically what you say been humiliated by Muslim invaders, quote unquote. um, and sometimes I feel we even if you look at the Twitter trolls, the WhatsApp army, and the government, we act as people who जैसे कहते हैं ना नेपोलियन सिंड्रोम, हाइट कम है और फाइट ज्यादा है.
Yeah.
So anyway, just some random rant that I had. I
Mhm.
just hope that I don't know what to hope. I hope things get better, but I don't even know what that means. Um, anything that uh, anything that is positive, any anything that is positive that you think is happening in India around us right now.
Positive. I think,
सोचना पड़ेगा.
yeah, I literally have to think. I think, I don't know. I think things have yet to go further south before things will improve. I do think, I do think as much as I say that climate change is a problem,
Mhm.
I think it could also be a moment which will shock India. I think maybe India needs a shock. Let's be very honest. I don't think India is a country which moves. There's this very interesting book I think called India Implosion or something by a British author, Eliot something. And he says India is a jugaad country. India will keep on doing jugaad of a particular situation. They'll keep on doing minor fixes till something major happens and shocks the system. And then they will have to move. And that's what happened with the economy, pretty much tanked in 91 before.
91.
Yeah. Before they had to, do something radical. I think,
पर अब
I,
तो वापस हिंदू रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ में आ गए हैं सर.
yeah, we are back in but the economy is not tanking. It's not, it's not as bad as it is yet. It is still growing at 5.5%, according to government figures. So the interesting thing,
Debatable, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think my only positive hope, lies in the fact that I think, I think the consciousness around maybe environmental causes is growing, and I think as states will fight more and more over water resources, I hope the government will wake up to the fact that they have to change their priorities and focus upon these kind of issues. I'm not saying that, I don't know where the social situation of the people of India will be, but like as I know it was a bad, I'm giving a really bad example, but there was this Netflix series Layla, which I'm sure you saw,
Yeah,
by Mira Nair.
yeah.
It was a very weird series, but I think what they captured very well was the climate apartheid aspect of the series, where they captured that, there's that very interesting shot where this woman goes into this kind of ghetto where she's sent,
Kala
and
Pani.
yeah, and she looks out and she sees this city, across the wall, which is like hyper developed, and this futuristic city. That could be, we could be staring at a future like that where there will be haves and have nots, and there will be very defined systematic things, access to resources and not. That could become India's future.
सर
But
प्यास तो लेकिन हैव नॉट्स के पास ही होगा.
yeah, yes. But they will say that is not to the disenfranchised. They'll say, well, this is not part of our cuisine. This is imported. So
नॉट कल्चर वो तो है. पर क्या क्या टमाटर ग्रीन चिली सभी कुछ तो कुछ भी तो नहीं है पार्ट हमारे कल्चर
everything
का.
is
किसके
from
लिए
outside.
लड़ोगे?
नहीं, वो कहेंगे ना नॉर्थ ईस्ट वाली ग्रीन चिलीज है आजकल. So yeah, नॉर्थ ईस्ट वाली जो
हाँ, I think I think भूत जलोकिया. भूत
yeah,
जलोकिया.
yes, yes, वो चलो okay.
I think we have covered everything. So, as is tradition, before we end our episode, any recommendations?
Recommendations as in
You've recommended a lot of, through the
I
episode, but
recommended a whole
anything
lot of
specific?
stuff. Uh,
Any book that you're reading right now?
right now, I'm reading a very boring book. It's called The Great Game in the Buddhist Himalayas. It's
Oh my God.
yeah, it's very specific. It's I don't think it's for everyone. But if I had to recommend one book, I would recommend a book for people to read, which I think, I don't know if you have read it or not, but it's a book called The End of Karma: Hope and Fury Among India's Young. That's the name of the book.
किसने
And
लिखी है?
Somini Sengupta. She's
I haven't read it, man.
yeah, she does write for the New York Times, and she's pretty good. She's also from Kolkata, so but she lives in New York, and it's a very interesting book, and I think it, from the title itself, I always find it very interesting. Hope and fury among India's young. So if you want to like read about stories of hope, and I think she interviews a whole bunch of I have the book where she interviews these young people and talks to them about their life, and going from city. And I think she picks up a few case studies and a few people that she interviews. But she's someone that I would recommend reading if you want to understand how India's young are coping with India's current condition. That's my recommendation.
I haven't read it, so it goes in my list. As far as my recommendations go, since we talked about that specific article, so I found it. So the article was published in the Caravan on 28th November.
Mhm.
It's called Battle for the Bhadralok: The Historical Roots of Hindu Majoritarianism in West Bengal. It's written by, ironically, Bhadralok Ishan Mukherjee. Um, but it's a very interesting article, and it covers why um, it seems like Bengal was casteless, and now suddenly it seems like it's so much. This, and to go back to the thing that we talked about, Tripura,
Mhm.
and the Bengali migration into Tripura and other northeastern states. I One of my last recent reads was a book by Sudeep Chakrabarti called "The Bengalis: A Portrait of a Community." Bengalis are the third largest ethno-linguistic group in the world after the Han Chinese and the Arabs. I bet you did not know that.
Mhm.
But so yeah, so if anyone uh, desires to read more about the ethno-linguistic group that is Bengalis that spreads globally, and then in India, in Bangladesh, and within India, in Tripura and West Bengal and Andaman.
Yeah.
Andaman is also majority Bengali.
I
Um,
would like to plug another book before we end. There's one book. Interesting. You talked about Bhadralok. I think I was reading
yeah,
some discussion where they were talking about Bhadralok and Chotolok in.
I tweeted about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting discussion. Those are the two terms that I know from
yeah.
there now. I've always known about Bhadralok, but I didn't know about Chotolok.
छोटो
So
लोग it's directly caste pejorative. जैसे हिंदी में कहते हैं ना, अरे नीच जैसी हरकत मत कर. It's basically that, and it's a caste pejorative. You just don't realize it growing up with before you
yeah.
actually develop a brain.
I think related to our discussion that we did about Northeast today, minutely. I would recommend this book by Anubha Bhosle. I think she's the only Delhi-based
And
or
she's a good
mainland, yeah,
journalist.
mainland journalist who has done actually reportage on the Northeast, and she's written this fascinating book called. I think this title alone should give you a hint about which perspective she's looking from. It's called "Mother, Where's My Country? Looking for Light in the
Wow.
Dark of Manipur." So it's very moving and a very realistic look at how India has really mismanaged the Northeast. And I think on that, I'll just add one small bit, which I think I forgot to discuss, that this government last month was almost on the verge of closing the Naga Accord. And the Naga Accord also has implications for Manipur and Arunachal, because there are Naga majority districts in that region. And one of the demands of the Nagas has been for Greater Nagaland. So nobody knows. As soon as it was announced that there was a deal that was about to go through, there were protests in the Imphal by the Manipuris. So heaven knows what they have. Still a secretive accord. Nobody knows what has been signed with the NSCIM and what has been guaranteed to the Nagas. So that's another part of this equation, that nobody knows where that will go in another, maybe this year,
Yeah.
the coming year.
Interesting times indeed.
Yeah.
Um, with that, let's end this episode. It was great fun talking with you rather, and getting to know stuff from you. I hope we can do this periodically.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I'll be welcome to.
Thanks, Saurabh. Thanks,
Sure.
guys.
I think I have to start following Tejinder. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, yeah.
ऐसे सिर जाना नहीं